It's Electric Drives. Your electric vehicle future starts right now. Welcome to the show. I'm Anthony Algmin, and I'm joined by my co-host, Bob Reese. We created the show to make it easier for others looking to move to electric vehicles, and that's more and more people every day. We're out there using EVs in normal commutes and road trips, and we'll share the wisdom we've gained from living our lives with electric vehicles. You can join in the conversation by sending your questions and topic ideas to questions@electricdrives.us, by joining the Electric Drives Facebook group, and by becoming a patron at patreon.com/electric drives to get exclusive content and help support the show. Bob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well.
Excellent. So today we're going to talk about why I'm an idiot. And there's probably many reasons, but we're going to talk about a specific reason today, because what I learned as I've talked about how I prepared my car for winter and all of that. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, okay, well, when I'm at it's easy in the morning, right? It's easy in the morning. I have my car plugged in. I have everything on a schedule. The car is warm. Everything's ready to go. Specific time. I get in the car and I'm leaving, right? Mm-hmm. All that, no problem. I don't have to do anything. I just show up. It's great. But at work, I'm leaving at different times of the day. I'm also aware that some days, like it was the other day, it's snowing and it's cold, and I want my car to be warm, and I want the windows and windshield to be defrosted if possible. I want to use the technology as best I can. And I realized in that research of how to do that, I'm an idiot. And here's why. So since I got the car about 6 months ago, I said, okay, well, when I'm leaving work, I know about 5-10 minutes ahead of time. Okay, I'm starting to get ready to leave for the end of the day. I want my car to start conditioning itself so it's ready to drive me. Like this is my mentality, right? I'm like, I want my car to be ready to go on this 38-mile drive back to home. And so in my mind, I'm like, that means I should start the car, because it's most of the time too, it's not about the climate as much as it is about just saying, I want that car prepared. So I'm thinking about it like the battery preconditioning. I'm thinking like, okay, does the battery need to do anything, or does the car need to do anything to prepare itself to get ready to drive? I don't know any better. I'm not an engineer on this stuff. I'm like, okay. And for any of you who are just listening, Bob is just sitting there like shaking his head.
No.
Like, nope. So you know where we're going. So, but there's an option, right? On the Tesla app, there's an option for remote start. And I'm like, oh, that must be what I want to have. So I'm going to start the car remotely so it's all ready to go. And then I'll show up and it'll be time to go. So that's what I've been doing every day when I'm leaving anywhere outside from home to get in the car to go. I'm like, well, have the car started. It's ready to go. I jump in. It's good. And what I did notice, though, is a lot of times when I did that, it didn't kick off the air conditioning and stuff like I would have expected it to, but I never really thought too much about that. I was just like,
oh, really?
Well, the cabin, and now I know why. But like in the moment, I'm like that's a little bit odd. But like every now and then it does something on it. I'm like, oh, I'll think about it later. It'll fix itself in an over-the-air update or something. And so I said to myself, okay, well, that's fine. So, but that's what I've been doing. I've been starting the car remotely. I'm doing that. But what I learned in my research for the cold weather is that there's actually 2 other settings that I can hit from my mobile app to get the car ready to go. One of them is the air conditioning, or the climate control. So I can kick off climate control to get the inside and the cabin ready to go. And I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty clear. Like that's in my mind. And this is why I thought that I should be using the remote start. In my mind, the climate would just be for like, oh, well, it's extra hot. I want to make sure the climate's good to go. But I thought that was secondary to the car being ready to go. It was really that I was thinking like, oh, maybe I should do that in case and maybe that feature is there for if you're not going to start driving immediately, but maybe you're going to go sit in the car for something before you're leaving. But starting the car is really what I want to do, because I'm still thinking from like an ICE mentality, right? And
yeah.
But and again, we've already prefaced I'm an idiot, so like we're going to learn why I was wrong and all of this stuff. But so the climate control, I hadn't thought too much about, and I hadn't really thought about it at all because you can set like 4 like quick icons, and so one of them, the one I set was just remote start, and so you do that. But so then the other related feature that you can also do is defrost the car. So there's a defrost
Oh.
selection, which is really for like pumping that air towards the windshield, the side windows,
Hmm.
even
Hmm.
the side mirrors, I think, have some heating elements in them. But
Yes.
and so it's really about like, okay, trying to clear the car of the ice and fuzz and like the kind of ice you get on the car overnight or throughout the day, like that may not clear itself out in 20 minutes. Like that's going to be something that you're probably still going to need a scraper for or whatever, but at least it'll help get the windshield so that it'll be easier to do if nothing else. And so I'm like, okay, well, those two things are obvious. But as I learned through this process, what I learned, the remote start is not at all for what I was doing. It isn't at
Oh.
all for that. What it's for is if, say, I was at work and I'd taken my wife's car to the office for some reason that day, and my car was at home and nobody had a key. I could remote start that car from my phone wherever I am, and it would give me a 2-minute countdown. There was this 2-minute countdown thing that I always thought was a little bit odd. Now I know why it was a little bit odd, because I'm remote starting that car and literally anybody can walk up to that
Oh.
car and drive away in it. And I have 2 minutes from the time I kick that off to get in the car and drive away. So what I was basically doing was, for the few minutes before I was going out to the car, I was making
Oh.
the car completely stealable for
All
anybody who
right.
wanted to go steal it.
And where do you work again?
Not talking about that. But yeah, but that's what was going on. I was actually remote enabling the car to be driven away,
Wow.
thinking I was starting it for myself. Because that feature is really a cool feature when you think about it. It's like, wow, that's awesome. It's like doing an OnStar type function just from your own phone. But
Correct.
it is in no way what you should be doing every time you're driving the car to like precondition it or whatever. And I'm like, well, it's obvious now, but man, for 6 months I was doing the wrong thing. So
That's weird
so
because GM has it set up where you hit the start button, it locks the doors,
hmm,
and then it initiates trying to get the temperature. If the temperature's below a certain point, say if it's below 50, I believe,
mhm.
the heated seats come on and it sets the different levels for those, and then the heated steering wheel comes on. And I think if it gets even colder, then it does the defrosters for, it does the electrical elements for both the mirrors and for the back window.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I've learned through this is that I should focus on being selfish. Is like, do I need climate control ready to go? Because that's what I should kick on. Do I need the
Right,
outside of
right,
the car and the windows and stuff defrost? If that's the case, I should kick that on. I do not need to worry about the remote start's just the wrong thing to do. The one thing that they did advise, and this I may start using this more, is that if I know what time I'm going to leave, I could adjust the scheduled time of departure so that it can then say, all right, I know when Anthony wants to leave today. I'll make sure that the car begins that process so it can know, okay, what's the ambient temperature? When do I need to kick off the climate control so that the climate in the interior of the car is at the right temperature by the time Anthony wants to go? That makes sense to
right,
me. That's probably a more efficient way than me saying, "Oh, I'm going to leave in 10 minutes. Better kick on the climate control." It may or may not have enough time, especially on these cold days. It might take 20
right,
minutes to get that cabin, nice and toasty, which is how I like it for when I'm driving home, in the dark when it's 10 degrees outside. So,
right,
um,
right.
yeah. So anyway, for what it's worth, like I have to imagine I am not the only person in the world who has made this mistake. I don't think it's a common mistake. I think it was me overthinking things, which is something I tend to do. But it was definitely surprising to me. And I mean, to be fair too, this stuff was outlined in the owner's manual, but it was one of those things where like I'm actually one of these people who reads the owner's manual. What I've learned is that I'm a person who doesn't retain everything I manage to read through on the
Ah,
owner's manual, because there's a lot of little things, right? And there's a lot of little details, and sometimes those details are well organized, and sometimes they're obvious, and sometimes they're easy to look up, sometimes they're not. And this, I didn't find it hard to find the answers once I was looking for them, but I had not stumbled on that before, and I had looked up things before, and it could have just been I wasn't considering that this remote start was something entirely different. I was just looking for details when I was looking for them. I'll take all the blame, but I do know that, like, somebody will have learned something from listening to this episode, because I cannot be the only one who's been doing this the wrong way.
I
For
can
an
guarantee
amount of
that you're
time.
not, because people coming from different vehicles probably would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing that you've been doing a long time, right? Like the remote start in your car kicks off the car, so it starts warming the cabin,
Yes.
and it warms up the car. It's ready to go. Like, that's what you think about. And so this is a bit of a different circumstance. And I was always thinking about the car first instead of my creature comforts, which is what they assume I wouldn't do. They wouldn't think, oh, here's Anthony, who's a big nerd, who's gonna like say, oh, how do I get the best efficiency and longevity from the car, versus how do I be comfortable when I leave the office, which I now feel a little silly about. But hey, that's part of this. I mean, this is the whole reason why we're doing this podcast, right? Is to learn and share and help each other, figure out this stuff, because this is still not simple. I mean, some of the conversations that we've had, these are things that you would never ever need to think about. You just think about last week's episode where we were talking about the different kinds of charging standards, and how we're at this time that reminds us of like VHS versus beta, and that we're trying to consolidate to a single standard, and hopefully that'll happen over time. But these are considerations you just never would need to worry about in the world of internal combustion, because that market's so much more mature than what we are with electric vehicles. Even though I think we're all seeing, those of us who own these and have been driving these, like, very few people are like, yeah, not worth it, I'm going to go back to burning dinosaurs. Like, that's not, you don't hear that very often, especially for people that are putting a lot of miles on their car. You really enjoy not the costs and the time you spend fueling at a gas station. Like, I do not miss that at all. So these little complexities, these little challenges and adventures are certainly worth it, I think.
Yeah. I don't miss going to the gas station. Well, I do have to go to the gas station because I usually end up filling daughter number two's car. Because she hasn't taken the wherewithal to learn how to do that too much, and I'm like, I probably don't have to go to do that, because probably the next car she gets will be electric, because she'll get the trickle down vehicles in our fleet, our personal fleet. Because I've got
that reminds
88,000
me. So
miles
how
on my
Illinois
car.
You mentioned fleets, and I have a question for you, because in Illinois we have all these different kinds of license plates, and there's the electric plates, there's the regular plates, there's vanity plates and sports team plates and things like that. But what I've noticed, electric vehicles, so we have to pay extra taxes, yearly registration fees for electric vehicles in the state of Illinois.
Right.
So most of our license plates all have some sort of number followed by an EL, standing for electric. And that's how they know, oh, these people have paid their appropriate taxes. But what I've noticed on a lot of the cars that I see, the electric cars, I see a plate that doesn't have the EL, but on the left-hand side has an F and a P, an F over the P, and then some number. And I feel like it's a fleet car of some sort. Like, perhaps these are the Hertz
leased
vehicles or the other things. But I see a lot of electric vehicles that have that F and P, and I don't know what that is. And I probably could go to the internet and look it up, but I'm curious about that, because there's got to be another way that they're doing that, whether it's a commercial fleet or something like that. But I have to imagine it's something outside of the normal personal ownership of electric vehicles, because I've seen it enough times that it's there's something going on there. So I wonder what that is, and I don't even know if that's applicable only to Illinois, or if that's something broader, but that's something that I've observed. So, and Bob is currently looking up.
Yeah, it's a fleet plate.
Oh, fleet plate. Okay.
Issued to companies like Comcast, Enterprise, Leasing, Hertz, etc.
Okay. So the rental cars probably are coming under that. So they have some other deal, which I would assume is the case. Like you're probably not charging them the same registration fees that you would for individuals, because there's probably either a bulk discount or some sort of commercial tax that's separate, or what have you. So Illinois will get its money one way or another, but it's
Right, right. Because we're not paying road taxes, so that's why the $100 penalty. But they make it up on my wife's car because she doesn't drive that much.
right. Yeah, you pay at the car level, and then that doesn't depend on how much you're driving. Whereas I feel like I get double dinged because I'm, granted, not paying the gas tax, but I am paying tollway fees for most of my drive. And so like every day I'm paying tollway fees. And so I know that those are largely what supports the roads I'm driving. But in the end, the amount I save in gas, the $100 isn't so bad, but it definitely, um, for the average driver, more than makes up what they would be collecting from a gas tax perspective, which has caused a little bit of consternation in the electric vehicle community in Illinois, because they've kind of swung that pendulum too far in charging that extra $100 on registration, because you got to get a lot of gas to pay $100 in gas tax. So
I think the break-even point was like under 15,000 miles.
still 15,000 miles. That's a lot of miles for normal
That's a lot of
humans,
miles.
Bob. That's not a
Right.
lot of miles for you. That's like a
No.
heavy march, or
Yes, right.
but it's yeah, for most people that's a lot of miles. I don't think I've ever put, honestly, before this year, I don't think I've ever put even 7,500 miles on my car in a year. Because I used to take the train to downtown Chicago all the
Oh, yeah.
time. I never, I worked remote, or I worked really close. Like this is the first time that I've got a substantial commute that is putting on, several hundred miles a week. So that's, yeah, but I mean, 15,000 miles, I think, is more than what most people average. But it's at least ballpark, I guess, but it really doesn't take into account folks like your wife who are putting on maybe 1,000 miles or 2,000 miles. That's a heavy tax
Yeah.
at a vehicle level to offset that.
Right, right.
So anyway, so what we are thinking about now, we're now getting it's when this airs, we'll be well into December. It'll be near the end of the year. What we haven't talked about are the changes in like the taxes and the new situation for vehicles that are being bought in the United States with those new rules. I have not really been looking into it, to be quite honest. It's not something that is top of mind for me because I already have the car that I anticipate having for a while. I'm going to keep this one at least a year, Bob. I'm promising you, at least a year. I'm keeping this one. I was reading about the new Macan EV, the premium platform that they're using for those vehicles, including the Macan. I was reading about that earlier today, and that's looking really interesting. I really would love to get a Macan again, but it would have to be the EV one. But those aren't going to come out until 2024. So hopefully, I can keep this Tesla for a while because I've been enjoying it. I really do think it's a good car for my particular situation. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting. I saw a BMW yesterday that I had not seen before. It was a mid-sized car.
Was it the i4 or the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the i4.
Yeah, I am. To be quite honest, I'm a fan of the cars that are electric powertrains but just look like cars. Like you have like kind of two schools of thought, right? Like you have your BMW i4, which like it's fancy, it's like a BMW, it looks nice, but it isn't immediately apparent that it's an electric vehicle. And there's ways you can tell it's an electric vehicle, but it doesn't scream electric vehicle in your face and knock you over the head. Whereas something like, I don't know, the Hyundai Ioniq, right? Like those, the Ioniq, what is it, the Ioniq 5? That hits you over the head. Like, I am an electric car. I am crazy town. The person driving me wants you to know that. And like there's two schools of thought there. And I think for this to really become mainstream, these cars just need to happen to have electric powertrains, and they need to be normal, nice cars for the most part. Like when you have a Honda Civic that is electrically powered and you couldn't tell from just glancing at it, that's when you know electric vehicles have truly arrived. That's when it's like,
Hmm.
okay, this is just normal now.
Yeah, I read yesterday about the new Toyota that's coming out, and it's actually more aerodynamic than the Teslas,
Hmm.
and it's using a different battery chemistry, lithium iron phosphate,
Hmm.
which is a little more bang for the buck, I guess. And it'll be interesting to see that. The efficiency of the battery's better. It's more aerodynamic, so they can get by with like a 75 kilowatt battery and still have a 350-mile range.
Hmm. And so this is for a Prius pure electric.
It's going to be a pure electric.
Hmm.
It's the pictures I saw. It doesn't look like a Prius.
Okay.
So it doesn't scream aerodynamics, but it has a lower coefficient of drag.
Oh, interesting. Well, I know I'd been reading about some of the hybrid Priuses that they're still going to be making.
Yep.
Toyota also talking about how they want to be fully electric by 2050, which I'm like, you're really shooting for the stars there, Toyota. Everybody else is still like imaginary, still talking about 2030, which I think at this point is pretty clear that nobody's actually going to hit that. But like 2050, you're like, we're just not even going to really try. So we'll keep building hybrids for the most part, and we'll do a couple of these, pure EVs.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get those numbers when you go into a dealership now, and it's all internal combustion engines at the dealership level, because they just can't produce enough battery electrics to even fill the void.
Yeah, but in 28 years, Bob, 28 years, you can do a lot.
28 years, that should be, you can be able to do a lot, but the 2030 issue is
2030 is not happening.
I think that's
somebody like Volvo might actually be able to pull that off. Volvo's small enough that they may be able to do something like that, like where they could really just cut the cord on that, or I guess you can't really say cut the cord because it's
you're actually adding more cord.
That. Yeah, you're adding cords, but it's I do think that some of the smaller niche automakers could make that transition faster, but they're not dealing in the volumes. And something like Toyota, I think they may just be more realistic, even though their lack of jumping on the bandwagon has a bunch of people up in arms. And I'm like, you know what? I don't expect Toyota or Hondas of the world to be leading the charge on the most innovative tech. I expect them to be bringing the masses with them when they do make that transition. And so they may be quietly planning for 10 years to build, 1 million cars. And that might be the way they do it. So whatever. I just think that we clearly are seeing tons and tons of momentum out there. Although I am worried with the economic downturn, whether or not we're going to see some of these upstart automakers run out of dollars and have some tough times. And so you're already hearing some stories that a couple of these new breed automakers are really going to struggle to turn that corner, like Tesla. Give them credit, they did it. They were able to turn that corner that very, very few upstart automakers have ever been able to do. So and thank goodness it's really helped propel this electric vehicle conversation that we're having. So with that, I don't think we have anything else. Bob, do you have any other closing wisdom before we call it a night?
Not really.
All right. Well, everybody, that wraps up our show for today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that YouTube bell icon. Please send your questions and topic suggestions to questions@electricdrives.us, and we'd love for you to join us on Facebook and Patreon. All the links are, of course, in the show notes. Thank you for spending some time with us, and we wish you a smooth road ahead on your own electric drives.